Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. The Royals 2032 season is over after winning the AL Central by a game over the Chicago White Sox. We faced them, hosted them in the best-of-3 wild card series, and we lost in 3 games, 3-2 in the final games. So we lost the series 2-1. So the playoffs continue for many other teams, but the season is done for the Royals at this point. So in this episode, we're going to sim through the rest of the playoffs, find out who ends up being the champion, and get to the offseason, where there's going to be some big potential happenings. First and foremost, will Caleb Lagarwell opt out of his $18 million player option for next season? I think he probably will. What will we do with Nikki Lopez's $5.5 million team option? I think we are likely to decline that option. And what will we do with Mckenzie Gore's $2 million team option? That one is more mixed. I think there's a chance that we exercise that, even though Gore had a rough year for us with a 5.92 ERA, kind of the worst season of his career, but it was a very small sample size with just 24 1/3 innings pitched. So think that he could still potentially be a useful pitcher for us next year, particularly if Lagarwell opts out of his contract and we're unable to bring him back with a longer and richer extension. And we're heading into the 2032 World Series, and as a baseball fan, Red Sox versus the Cubs, kind of a cool World Series. Obviously, 2 franchises that were cursed for most of the 20th century into the 21st century before they got that win in the case of the Cubs and got 4 wins in the case of the Red Sox. As a Yankees fan, I have to root for the Cubs, but as a baseball fan, Red Sox versus Cubs is a pretty cool World Series, so we'll see what happens with that. The White Sox, who knocked us off, lost in the second round to the Angels, who then went on to lose to the Red Sox. And you can see the Cubs are a wild card team, just like the Red Sox, who have made it all the way to this 2032 World Series. And the matchup between the Cubs and the Red Sox was as good as it gets. 4-3 win for the Cubs in the World Series, but fitting that a marquee World Series matchup between 2 of the marquee franchises in Major League Baseball goes to 7 games. So congrats to the Cubs on the virtual 2032 World Series championship. And now our attention turns back to our Royals. Caleb Lagarwell, testing free agency, not a shock. Let's see how we did with our goals. Not happy with our performance this year. Didn't really upgrade at second base. Need to bring home another World Series trophy in the near future. He's worried with our performance, but his overall mood with our performance is good. Need to win the championship next year and also build a dynasty in the next 6 seasons. So the pressure remains high. I'm hoping our budget expanded. We increased our ticket prices, increased our revenue per game, and $244 million. I think that is a small bump. Yeah, 238 to 244. So that's going to help us. Obviously, with Lagarwell opting out, that opens up a lot of money also. But did get another $6 million bump. You can see we've made really slow but steady progress with our budget over the time that we've been leading the Royals, and we're now 14th in budget and player payroll, so clearly a mid-market team at this point, which is good. So a little bit more money, losing some personnel. Arbitration period begins, and we need to decide on Nikki Lopez and Mckenzie Gore. Nikki Lopez is the easy decision with all of the young middle infielders we have coming up. Rich Alvarado, Tony Fonseca, Arigato Lazioli, and Willie Flores. Lopez, after he left for a year when he was looking for big money for a 1-year deal, we did bring him back to kind of stabilize the position defensively for us, and we won a championship last season, made the playoffs this year. He was a below-average offensive player, but still solid defensively. But think with the youngsters that we have coming up, we can move on from Mr. Nikki Lopez. So we are going to go ahead and void that last contract year. And as you can see, that now opens up more money for us to play with, which is good. Now we got to figure out what to do with Mckenzie Gore. Only going to be at $2 million for this team option year. So we can save $1.8 million if we let him go. Certainly at this point in his career, profiles as a average-ish major league pitcher. He's fragile, but he is a lefty. He can start or relieve. Over the course of his career, although he had a very poor year this year for us with that 5.92 ERA and a small sample size, he has started for us at times and put up a 117 ERA plus and a 91 FIP minus. I think he can still play a useful role for us this coming off season, so I think I am inclined to execute the option, bring Mckenzie Gore back. And with that, the big attention is going to turn to salary arbitration. See, we've got a fair number of players and a fair number of potentially expensive players led by Alex Vasquez headed to arbitration. We've got a bunch of players hitting free agent. Certainly going to submit a qualifying offer to Caleb Lagarwell. Certainly going to submit a qualifying offer to Jacob Guerrero. We'll have to decide on the rest of them. Probably not. Wonder what Caleb Lagarwell is looking for. I'm guessing it's got to be $24-25 million a year. Not as bad as I thought. Only $20 million a year. I'm guessing he's probably going to be 24-25 if he makes it to the open market. We may have to try to get him locked up while we can before he hits free agency. Just check in. We looked at this at the end of our last episode, who the top pending potential free agents are. Morgan McSweeney, interesting closer. Jake Ader. But looking at the starting pitchers, Lagarwell certainly slots into that first tier. Says he's going to be looking for 21.4, so a little less than I had expected he might be looking for. But, we went through Brule, who's out with a torn rotator cuff. Travis Garnett, where you don't love the movement and control. And then similarly, Jorge Rodriguez with a pretty unbalanced profile, pretty mediocre movement and control, and really just one great pitch. I like a more balanced guy like Lagarwell than any of them, and a guy who's also normal injury proneness. Although actually kind of surprising, all four of those top pitchers are still normal injury proneness, even though they're all in their late 20s and early to mid 30s. You don't normally see that. So Lagarwell, I think, is the best starter out there. Looking at the batters who could be available, and if we have a hole to fill, it's kind of probably a corner outfield spot. Jacob Guerrero, as I mentioned, we're going to make a qualifying offer to him. Looking for $27 million a year, just can't afford to do that. Julio Rodriguez, I think, is a similar situation. He's looking for even more money. Would certainly love to have him back, or have to have him on the team. But actually, it would be having him back, because if you remember, when we won our first World Championship in 2027, we did make a trade for him with the Mariners right before he became a free agent, and he was a very important contributor to that, winning the World Series MVP award for us that year. So we won't be bringing him back, but would be great to have him back. O'Neill Cruz, Vlad Guerrero Jr., Gerald Nin, huge players, great players, but not the types of guys that we can afford. So we're going to be more down in the Jay Allen, maybe Harrison Bader and Brennan Davis, who's on our team now. Those are the kind of guys that realistically we would be potentially targeting. And honestly, none of those guys are as interesting to me as bringing back Caleb Lagarwell and really trying to keep this pitching staff, which had the third fewest runs allowed in the American League and the third best ERA among our starting pitchers. Kind of want to bring Caleb Lagarwell back. Looking at Aaron Nola, former ace for us, he ended up rough year for the Phillies, 8-6 record, but a 4.94 ERA over those 94 2/3 innings. So feel like we got all that we could get out of him last year when we won it all. I'm sure he's going to be looking for big money again also. Won't be coming from us. But my initial thought is we're going to probably try to bring Lagarwell back at that kind of number. We've got the money to sign him right now. We'll obviously try to do it for a little less than he's looking for. And then we'll get involved in the arbitration discussions too. So Lagarwell looking for $20.6 million over 6 years with a player option at the end. He's only 30 years old right now. He's normal injury proneness. If you're going to go 6 years on a 30-year-old pitcher, a guy like Lagarwell that has just been a workhorse over the past 8 years, 32, 31, 33, 33, 33, 33, 33, 33, as far as his numbers of starts since he kind of broke in as a full-time pitcher in the majors. So, and he's been very effective with that 1.13 ERA plus, 92 FIP minus, 3.69 career ERA. Only a one-time All-Star, but, he won Game 7 of the World Series for us last season, and he's just been an incredibly consistent pitcher. If there's someone that we're going to pay, I'm happy to have it be Caleb Lagarwell. So we're going to try to bring him back. Not the money that he's looking for, but probably not going to be too far off from that with what we offer him. Would obviously love it if it's a team option rather than a player option in that final season, but I'm not going to let that hold up the deal. All right, so Lagarwell's looking for $20.6 million over 6 years. We're offering him $18.5 million average over 6 years with a team option for the final season rather than the play option he was looking for. So about $2 million a year less in terms of the average annual value, and certainly the team option instead of the player option in the final season is going to be less attractive to him. Did keep the same All-Star and Cy Young Award bonuses. We'll see what Lagarwell thinks. He's willing to think about it. If we can get him back for that kind of number, I would be very happy with it. So we'll get the offer out there to Caleb Lagarwell. Hopefully get him locked up. And the interesting thing is that the $18 million a year that we're offering him for the next 5 years, he opted out of the 1 year, $18 million deal. So we're not really even paying him any more money until that potential 6th year with the team option at the end. If we can lock him up for 5 years, $18 million a year with that slightly higher team option at the end, I think that's a excellent deal for the Royals. And moving into the arbitration eligible players, Zach Jacobs, starter for us this past year, had a solid year. Not looking for huge money, just looking for a bump from 1.7 to 1.9. Obviously going to try to save a little bit of money, but I don't know how low we're going to be able to go with him. Sorry, I keep clicking that I want to make a note for Zach Jacobs, and I do not want to do that. I would like to offer him an extension. We'll offer him $1.8 million. I hope that gets it done. Nope. 1.85. All right, he's willing to listen to that, so that's positive. Sandy Gaston, who we traded for from St. Louis, has not been great over the course of his major league career. You can see 85 ERA plus, 103 FIP minus, But he did pitch very well in a small sample size with us, with a 2.81 ERA over 16 innings, 151 ERA plus, 53 FIP minus, and a 2.34 Sierra. And you see, over the course of his major league career, although he's got a 4.91 ERA, his Sierra is 3.23. He's wrecked physically, which I don't love, but we're not looking for a long-term commitment. He made $1.34 million this past year. He's looking for more. We think he can get him for 1.5-ish. He's looking for a bump for 1.66. We're going to offer him a little less than that. Willing to bring him back. It's not such a huge contract that if he ends up not making the major league roster coming out of camp, we should be able to trade him. Not interested in 1.4 million. Hopefully 1.45 will get it done. He's willing to think about that. Excellent. Bryce Hubbard, effective lefty for us out of the bullpen. He really was kind of on the Omaha to Kansas City shuttle for several years when you look at those pitching staffs, the first few years of his career. 2029, 2030, 2031 was up and down between Omaha and Kansas City all those years after spending 2 full years in Omaha before he finally got to make his major league debut. But at the major league level, 133 ERA plus, 79 FIP minus. He's been pretty effective for us. Still not that expensive. Left-handed arm, although he's really the same against lefties as he is against righties. So not really much more effective there, but only looking for a bump from the minimum up to about 1.3 million. Actually, he's looking for more than that, as I always screw up. He's looking for 1.44. I'm going to see if we can sign him for 1.2 million for next year. Just get him locked up. Okay, we're going to have to go to 1.25 million. Seems pretty consistent that I'm about 50,000 a year off with these players when I try to come in a little bit low. And then Easton Tumis, last pitcher available or eligible for arbitration. He's starting to get up there in price. That's the only thing that bothers me. He made 4.2 million this past year. We think we can get him for about 4.8, so we can probably get him for about 4.6, 4.65 if we don't go to arbitration. I like the fact that he's got the stamina to be a starter in a pinch. He did start 1 game for us last year. At the major league level, he's another one of these guys that we brought over from Colorado who's been much more effective in Kansas City, similar to Ben Borgman. He had put up a 96 ERA plus and an 87 FIP minus in Colorado. Interestingly, although the ERA plus has improved to 111 with KC, his FIP minus is still 87. So, kind of the optics of a much easier park for pitchers in Kansas City. But he's been respectable for us with a 3.81 ERA over 248 innings pitched. The question is whether he's a $4.8 million a year pitcher. He's a good insurance policy, given that he can start for us. But I don't know what I want to do with him. Because we also have Will Goebel and Tyler Bosma going to free agency. Bosma's only looking for $3.6 million. He was our closer this past year. Will Goebel, I think, was looking for about 6. Yeah, now he's up to 6.5. I'm torn on Tumis right now. I've got to give that a little bit more thought. Tyler Bosma fits a similar role in that I don't love his profile, but he does have enough stamina that he can start for us in a pinch. You can see he was a regular starter 2 years ago, kind of a swing man last season, and then he moved to become our closer this past year. But I think I'd rather pay Tyler Bosma $3.6 million a year than I would pay Easton Tumis $4.8 million a year. It's possible we bring them both back. Bosma's been a slightly above average pitcher over the course of his career. Torn on what to do there. Need to give it some thought. Alex Vazquez, obviously we are going to try to bring him back. Had a I guess a bit of an off year, although he did lead the league in doubles for the fourth straight year, or the third straight year. He's only been in the majors those 3 full years. I'm going to pay him whatever he's looking for. His arbitration number from our perspective is about 10.6. I'm sure he's looking for more than that. We don't have the ability to sign him to this big extension at this point because of the money that we're going to have out to Lagarwell. Let's just try to get him locked up for next year. 1 year deal, 10 million, 10.25 million. Let's just see if we can avoid and we'll give him $1 million bonus if he's the MVP, even though we don't really need to do that for. Actually, he's an arbitration eligible player, but we want to keep him happy. He's an important player for us. Give him another $250,000 when he makes the All-Star team. So cut it down to $10 million, but with those bonuses, maybe he'll go for it. Ooh, nope, he's not pleased with that. 10.5 million. Don't want to make him angry. Yeah, he's willing to think about 10.5 million. So definitely want to make sure we get Alex Vazquez back. Ricardo, Cabrera, and Junior Marin are both more interesting decisions. Cabrera, over the course of his career, is a below-average hitter. You can see, actually, he's kind of been steadily deteriorating in terms of his level of production, at least in terms of his OPS plus and WRC plus since he burst on the scene as a rookie. But 85 OPS plus, 83 WRC plus over the course of his career. He's fragile. Those are the negatives, but he is a competent second baseman, third baseman, and shortstop. So just a really good utility infielder. Don't love the low work ethic. Looking for $2.4 million. I think he can certainly have a role on the team. I guess what I need to figure out is right now thinking about what the roster is going to look like next year among our infielders. We have, obviously, Bobby Witt Jr. will be back at third. Obviously, Alex Vasquez will be back at first. Juan Palomares will likely be back. So we've kind of got 3 spots. And we've got Willie Flores, who is better defensively than Cabrera and looks like he could become a better hitter than Cabrera. We've got Tony Fonseca, who is probably not as good a hitter as Cabrera, but is exceptional defensively. And then also in the mix, our second baseman, Rich Alvarado, who is definitely not as good and not as versatile defensively as Ricardo Cabrera, but is potentially a better bat. He still has option years left if we want to give him a chance to have that contact, home run power, and in some of the areas develop. And then last but not least, Arigato Lazioli, who is pretty similar defensively to Cabrera, can also play second, third, and short, and looks like he could be a better bat. He's also fragile. I don't know that I want all 4 of those guys up, Flores, Fonseca, Lazioli, and Alvarado, because I think they all have areas where they can grow as far as their hitting skills and could benefit from a little more time in AAA. But if we have 3 of those guys on the Major League roster, we don't really need Ricardo Cabrera anymore. He's out of option years. I mean, I like the fact that he's a veteran. He's a proven guy that can play all 3 of those positions, and his expectation is to just be on the bench. There's definitely value in a utility infielder that can be a positive defensive player at second, third, and short without hurting you offensively. That's a tough decision because Cabrera with the money he's going to be making in the coming years, is not as long-term a solution as the likes of Flores, Fonseca, Lazioli, and Alvarado. But by the same token, I don't know if I want all four of those players kind of on the same cycle as far as their major league service time. So it probably makes sense to keep at least one, if not two of them in AAA most of this year, getting a little more seasoning and avoiding service time. So we've kind of got them staggered a little bit, so they're not all going to be potentially leaving at the same time when they're eligible for free agency 6-7 years down the line. I could go either way on that one. And Junior Marin is kind of a similar situation. He's going to be looking for $4.4 million, so the same neighborhood as Ricardo Cabrera. He has been a more effective offensive player over the course of his career. You can see 30, 27, 28, and 31 home runs his first 4 years before really struggling this past year with a career low 240 batting average, career low slugging percentage, career low OPS, career low OPS plus, career low WRC plus, negative WAR, just 10 homers and 367 at-bats. But the issue is that with the potential loss of Brennan Davis, who he kind of platooned with most of this year, Marin's probably a starting outfielder for us right now. So I think that we hope he bounces back a little bit. He still has the contact and the home run power and is a decent enough base runner that I think he can produce, maybe not as well as he did in 2030 and 2031, but I think he can be an above-average offensive player for us this coming year. I mean, he has proven over the course of his career to be a slightly above-average offensive player, at least per OPS plus and WRC plus. So I think there's potentially some value in him. Number for him is 4.4. He's looking for 4.8. I'd like to get him for less than that. Let's see if we can do 4.2 coming off a bad year. He's willing to think about it. So we made the offer to Marin. Still got to figure out what to do with Cabrera. And yeah, I thought that number was 4.4. I thought it was the same as Marin, but it's not. 2.4. I don't know that Cabrera is going to make the 26-man roster, but I think I'm willing to make an offer to him. Let's see if we can get him for $2.2 million for next year. Certainly someone that we can trade away at the end of spring training if the young guys are just all lights out during spring training and we want to have them all on the major league roster. The Cabrera contract is not going to be so bad that we can't get away from him. And then I am going to offer Tyler Bosma also. As I mentioned, I'm really conflicted on Easton Tumis. He's been good with us. I love that he can start, but I don't know that he's an almost $5 million a year pitcher. He's looking for 5.5. The number's 4.8. We can probably get him for about 4.6. Yeah, him and Tyler Bosma are similar profiles, and Tyler Bosma is cheaper. He's looking for 3.6 over 4 years with a player option. We'll change that to be a little less favorable and see what he thinks. We're going to offer Bosma the 4 years he's looking for, but the average annual value is just 3.25 as opposed to the 3.6 he's looking for, and we've got a team option with the bigger number in that final year, so that's less attractive from that perspective. And he also wanted to be promised a starting rotation role. Right now he doesn't fit in the starting rotation. He was our closer last year, as you know. Let's see what he thinks of this. Wants a role that meets his expectations. I don't know that I want to promise him a starting rotation spot because he's not going to be in our starting rotation unless there's some injuries. All right, so we're going to try to compromise here. We're going to come back $3.3 million a year for 3 years, and we are going to include a player option in the last season, which we were trying to avoid. But we're still not going to promise him that he's going to be in the starting rotation. So, and that seems to be a hang-up for him. So we may not be able to get this deal done. Yeah, he really wants to be in the starting rotation. So I'm going to have to give that a little more thought. You know, we're obviously at the first day of thinking about arbitration here. It's only October 27th. We've got until December 17th to figure those things out. So right now, I think let's see what happens with the offer to Lagarwell and the offer to all of the other arbitration-eligible players before deciding what we want to do with Tumis, Bosma, Brennan Davis, Goebel. Not going to make an offer to Lopez. Would love to bring back Guerrero, but just can't afford it. Don't think we're going to be bringing back any of those guys. Yonadon, looking for $4 million now. Borderline. I feel like he is a little bit better of a pitching profile, but he's a pure reliever. But I like his ratings better than I like Tumis's ratings or Tyler Bosma's ratings, but those guys can both start, whereas Adon is a pure reliever. All right, starting to get some of the arbitration-eligible players signed. Hubbard, Gaston, and Zach Jacobs. And the fans pleased that we brought Zach Jacobs back. Alex Vasquez got the extension. Fans ecstatic with that, which is great. Caleb Lagarwell, very happy to have him back. Junior Marin and Cabrera also back. So, we knew we were going to have Vasquez back. It was just amount of the number, given that he's only arbitration eligible for the first time this year. Having Lagarwell back is good. So feeling good about what's happened. So everyone that we made arbitration offers to is now signed, and it's only Halloween 2032. So we've got about $7 million in capacity right now. We're going to get a bump in the budget when it flips over to the next year, which will help us a little bit. We can obviously tinker with scouting and development over the near term. Recommended draft slot amounts. We're going to want to up that a little bit for the time being. So we're going to kick that up to $12 million. We'll know more about it once we see what happens with free agents and compensatory picks that we get, but want to make sure that we've got enough money there. And obviously that's going to hurt our money available for free agents. So for the near term, we are going to cut back a little bit on our scouting and development budgets, not hugely, cut them both by about 10% just to open up a little more money to play with as we're preparing for this off season. That does potentially give us the money if we wanted to bring on a Brennan Davis. I believe that Marin is also a right-handed batter. I'd feel better about bringing them both back if Marin was a left-handed hitter, but I don't think he is. Marin also bats right-handed, so I think Marin will have a bounce back year, so I'm definitely torn on what to do with Brennan Davis. The only guy we're going to make the qualifying offer to is Jacob Guerrero, who's going to get huge money. I would think that that's going to turn into a first-round pick for us, which is not a bad return on a guy who was really only on our team for 1 year, to replace Dylan Cruz, who hopefully will be back in full force next season. So we've got a little money to play with now. I guess we got to decide, are we going to make an offer to Tumis or not? And the other thing I can think of is let's shop him around and just see what value there is for Easton Tumis. If we're not sure we want to be paying him around $4.5 million next year, is there someone more interested in doing that? You can see not a huge market for him. Chris Stansfield, could kind of fill one of those corner outfielder roles for us. He's out of option years, which isn't optimal. But his profile actually, offensively looks pretty similar to Nazir Muley, who's going to be our fifth outfielder likely next year. Over the course of his major league career, he's been pretty, actually significantly below average. So Chris Stanfield, not all that interested. Alex Ayala Jr., closer, meh. Jesus Valenzuela, first baseman, don't really need a lot of help there with Vasquez and Palomares. Eli Serrano, like the home run power, don't love the personality, don't really need a unversatile defensive player. Milan Tolentino, second baseman. We've got all those middle infielders coming up. So there's not really a lot out there, unfortunately, for Tumis in the trade market. So it's really just a matter of, do we want to make him an arbitration offer and bring him back or not? So as we've tried to figure out what to do with those pitchers that we may need to make offers to, we've just kind of taken a look at our potential 26-man roster and everyone who's under salary obligation. And to free up a little bit of money, we waived and DFA'd several players. Reggie Crawford, who was injured all of last year, profiles as a replacement level arm. So we've waived and DFA'd him. We've waived and DFA'd Borgie Franzen, who had a small time in the majors in 2031 where he didn't hit much in Double-A this past year. He's going to be 29 years old soon. He's versatile defensively, but not particularly good defensively anywhere. So we've waived and DFA'd him. Same thing with Christian Rodriguez, who did not hit much when he was up with us briefly in 2031 with Miami, and then 2032 this past season with us. And then last but not least, Sal Stewart, who was brutal, hitting just 177 for us and close to 200 at-bats last year. Waived and DFA'd him also. So hopefully we can keep those guys in the organization, but don't want them to be on guaranteed major league contracts unnecessarily. So doing that, you can see that's opened up some more money for us, which is possible. And then also kind of thinking about the catcher position, we do have Leo Aguiar as a potential backup. He's 25 years old. He did not hit much at all, just 207 in AAA this past year. But he has a major league glove, and you look at that batting profile, and he can be a close to average major league hitter, I think. If you look simply at those batting ratings, obviously, hitting 207 in AAA indicates that there may be a bit of a problem there that's not showing up in the ratings. He's not particularly fast, but I think he's a more than competent backup catcher to Bolden if we just want to go with guys that are younger next year. So then that, with all the young middle infielders we have potentially coming up, just leaves corner outfield as a spot where we may want to spend some money this off season. We've talked about potentially bringing back Brennan Davis, which is one option. The other option for the longer term, though, is Victor Aguiar, 23 years old, soon to be 24. He was a 14th round draft pick, but you can see he's looking like he's probably close to a major league average-ish hitter right now, just looking at his batting ratings. Does have the opportunity to potentially be a plus offensive player. He's a corner outfielder, could play center field if you had to. Issue is he's never been above Double-A. He was effective there this year, hitting 277 with 10 homers, 26 doubles, 105 OPS plus, 102 WRC plus. Certainly could be a fourth outfielder for us down the line. I don't know that he's ready to come up this coming season. We've got Cruz, who's coming off a major injury, Velasquez in center, Marin, who we don't love as an everyday player, back and right after we just agreed to arbitration with him, and then Nazir Muley as a fifth outfielder. I think we want someone a little more established as a kind of fourth outfielder or even a potential starter over Marin for this coming season. So I don't think we want to make a long-term commitment to a corner outfielder, and maybe that encourages me to think about bringing back Brennen Davis on a 1-year deal to kind of fill the role that he filled for us this past season. But would be nice if next year at this time we can feel like we can pretty confidently pencil Aguiar into a either fourth outfielder or maybe a starting corner outfielder position for the 2034 season. So thinking about our pitching staff with Borgman, Lagarwell, Graceffo, Jacobs, and Vanasco, our starting rotation is set. Hubbard and Gore are going to be back as lefties. We're going to have Dabovich, Gaston, and Williams as righties out of the bullpen, but we still could use a couple kind of swingmen, and we could use a big-time closer. So there's room for Tumis, and there's room for Bosma, and there's room for Goebel. The question is, which of them do we want to try to bring back now? I mean, there's also room for Yona Doan, but I think that we've got a little bit of money to spend, and we're probably going to get a little bit more of a bump when we move to the next season, and we can tweak with our scouting, development, draft, international free agent budgets, so we can fit in some people. I think I'd like to add at least one higher level arm in the bullpen this offseason. So the question is whether we save a little bit of money to do that. And then we also want to kind of add that fourth outfielder who may actually become a starting third outfielder for us above Junior Marin. And when I look at the potential upcoming free agents, there's some huge names out there that we're just going to not be able to afford. Brennen Davis at the money he's looking for doesn't seem bad. Cross jumper. He's fragile. He's hit pretty well over the course of his career. 114 OPS plus, 109 WRC plus, just 29 years old. I like the power with Brennen Davis. But Brennen Davis really hasn't been much more effective. He's been less effective, quite honestly, as a major league player over the course of his career, at least offensively. I had kind of talked myself into offering Brennen Davis that $7.5, $8 million to get him signed before free agency, but definitely don't want to be offering him a 4-year deal. I don't know that we need to do that. Cross jumper, if he hits free agency, would be an option. Seiya Suzuki, another veteran. What has he done over the course of his career? He's been an above-average offensive player, although he's coming off a poor season at the age of 37, and he's fragile physically also. So, all these guys are fragile. Cross jumper, if he's really 1.3 million, I think that might be the way to go. But I don't feel like we have to sign Brennen Davis right now. We can probably pick up a corner outfielder through trade. In worst case scenario is maybe that we bring up Aguiar earlier than we want to. But we do need to figure out what to do with the pitchers. Out of Tumis, Bosma, and Goebel, I actually like Goebel the best as far as his profile, and with a 114 ERA plus 80 FIP minus, he's been the most effective over the course of his career. But he's looking for $6.5 million for a left-handed middle reliever who's actually more effective against right-handers slightly than he is against lefties. I like the guy a lot. He's been a 2-time All-Star for us, but I don't think he's a $6.5 million a year pitcher. Yona Doan, like the profile there too. He could actually start if we had to, but he doesn't really have the third pitch. That changeup is pretty mediocre, so he's really a pure reliever. But he's looking for a lot less money than Goebel is. And Bosma's demand is not unreasonable at all. I just don't know that I want to guarantee the guy a starting rotation position when I know I'm not going to be able to give it to him. But at this point, he's insistent on that. So we're going to switch it back to a team option for the final year of this contract. Lower the money a little bit, but see if he's really committed to that starting rotation role being in the contract. He's not going to be happy that he's a spot starter for us. Maybe since he would be the closer, he'd be fine with it. I don't know about fine with it, but he'd accept it. Yeah, he's willing to think about this 3-year deal. Averages $3.2 million a year. We do have a team option for the final season, so we're going to go offer that to Bosma. Definitely could use another lefty out of the pen. Definitely could use another player who is capable of starting in a pinch. So we'll try to bring Bosma back. And then we still have to decide whether we want to bring back Tumis or Yona Doan as another right-handed arm out of the bullpen. And I do like the fact that, Tumis definitely has the stamina to start. And I think we're going to offer Tumis. I do like the versatility here with the fact that he can start or relieve. He wants 5.5. We think his arbitration number is 4.8. He made 4.2 this past year. If we could sign him for 4.6, I wouldn't feel horrible about it. I don't know that I'm going to promise him a role in the starting rotation. He's willing to think about that. All right, so if we're able to bring back Tumis and Bosma, that kind of gives us two guys who can start for us. Could be fifth starters or fourth starters if we do end up having more injuries to our pitching staff than we had this past season. And then we'd be heading into the offseason really just needing to get a top-end arm for the bullpen, potentially a closer. Bosma has certainly proven he can close this past season, although we don't like what happened in the deciding game of the wild card series from him. But if we could bring in a real closer this offseason and then kind of a corner outfielder who would be our maybe fourth outfielder or maybe take over as a starter for Marin, I think those are the two big moves that we would have ahead of us to try to make this offseason if we're able to get Tumis and Bosma signed up. And we did lose one of the players we tried to waive in DFA. Miami picked up Sal Stewart. Honestly, with the quality of the young infielders we have coming up and the fact that we've already got Vasquez, Witt Jr., and potentially Palomares on the team, he was organizational depth. Maybe we should have tried to trade him instead of trying to waive and DFA him and sneak him back into the, get him off of a major league contract. But he was just so ineffective for us this year. I can't be too upset that we don't have him on board. Yeah, would Mike Augustini make us a better team? Yes, he certainly would. But he's making $9.6 million this year, and he's signed for $20 million next year. I'm guessing that we don't have anyone who the Royals would or the Astros would be interested in that would make that deal work. Yeah, doesn't seem like it. That could be because of the salary situation, though. Let's see if they retain 80%. Definitely going to be no one who makes it work then. All right, I don't need to spend time dreaming about bringing Mike Augustini onto the team. We're getting close to awards season. You can see with the arbitration eligible players we've signed, we've gotten fan interest up to 99, which is very good because when fan favorite Nikki Lopez moves on, Guerrero moves on, Brennan Davis potentially move on, Tim Anderson and Sean Murphy move on. We're going to be taking some hits there in terms of our fan interest. So good that we've at least pumped it up a little bit with the arbitration guys that we've signed. All right, so Easton Tumis has signed. That's positive. Yimi Capio Rodriguez, who is a important coach in our system. We only signed him last year, and we signed him to a $200,000 a year deal to be in our DSL team, because you can see he's outstanding at teaching pitching, legendary with aging, good with development, excellent with mechanics. And the team had a 3.13 ERA and a pretty good record this year. We're going to have to decide whether we can promote him to keep him in the organization. We do have some openings in our minor league system at this point. We could promote him all the way up to high A ball. I don't know if that's a big enough promotion for him. But when we signed him last year, I did know that we weren't going to be likely bringing back the pitching coach, and I thought he might be in need of a promotion. So let's see if I don't know if promoting him to high A ball is going to be enough to keep him from signing with the Orioles, but we'll give that a try. And now let's just take a look at the Gold Glove winners here. Bobby Witt Jr., another Gold Glove for the potential future Hall of Famer. That will mark his 7th Gold Glove at third base for us. So I think he's going to get some MVP votes off of that 7 WAR season. Probably won't win the award, but good to see another Gold Glove for Bobby Witt Jr. And Yimi Kipio Rodriguez, let's see if we can promote him, keep him around. I don't know if it's going to be enough. Again, real life, if a player was offered to be a coach was offered to be a major league pitching coach, and we countered with, we'll promote you from the DSL to high A ball. That's not going to keep anyone around. Let's see with Rodriguez if we appoint him as the pitching coach for high A Quad Cities. And then let's see if we can offer him an extension also. Not interested in signing an extension at this time. So that's problematic. Brian Conger is a pretty good pitching coach at the major league level. Good with development, mechanics, and aging. Excellent at teaching pitching. And we've got him signed to 2036. So we'd taken a bit of a hit in terms of paying out $2 million if we let him go to keep Kipio Rodriguez around. So let's see. We offered him the promotion. He doesn't seem interested in talking about an extension, so I think he's going to end up going to Baltimore. His personality is normal, works well with normal, struggles with temperamental. If we brought him up to the major league team, he'd work well with Byron Nichols. There's nobody on the team that he'd struggle with, so it really wouldn't mess with our staff cohesion. The issue is just, do we want to pay out $2 million to a pretty good pitching coach in Brian Conger? To keep Kipio Rodriguez around. Kipio Rodriguez is a better pitching coach if you just look at the numbers, but Conger is not bad. I think we're going to try to see if the promotion will keep him around. I don't think it will, but it is what it is. So the Silver Slugger Awards were announced today, and Bobby Witt Jr. Doubled up. He got the Gold Glove, and then he got a Silver Slugger. And this is actually the first time he's won the Silver Slugger Award. So had a really nice career for us, but first time he's been a Silver Slugger at third base, so good to see there. And Jacob Guerrero, kind of the one-year wonder for us as we picked him up to replace the injured Dylan Cruz. Had a really nice year for us, hitting over 300, 38 homers, 105 ribbies. He got a Silver Slugger. Also, Jasmine Diaz, our former corner outfielder last year, who was on a one-year deal similar to what we did with Guerrero this year, won a Silver Slugger for Cleveland. Had a huge year for them. Congratulations to him on that. And for the first time in his career, Alex Vasquez did not win the Silver Slugger Award as he had a bit of a down year this season. So although we did lose Sal Stewart, Reggie Crawford, Borgie Franzen, and Christian Rodriguez all did clear waivers. So we've sent them all to AAA. So that did free up a little bit of money for us to use with guaranteed major league contracts on other players going forward. And we're getting into the big awards now. AL Cy Young Award went to Jurangelo Clinche, as we thought it possibly could when we saw his stats when we faced him in the AL Wildcard Series. Kumar Rocker was second, and our own Ben Borgman was third in the voting, the only Royal who got votes this year. And over in the National League, Jose Devora, 12-2 with a 2.20 ERA and 228 strikeouts and 159 and a third innings, won the National League Cy Young Award. And some more good news. We did get Tyler Bosma to sign that extension. Fans like that he's back. Still trying to sign some coaches. Still haven't heard what's going to happen with Yimi KPO Rodriguez. But it's good to have Bosma and Tumis back. As I mentioned, now we can head into free agency, and we just need a real frontline reliever, and we could use a corner outfielder, and those are really the two needs that I think we have as a team as free agency potentially begins. Up to 100 in fan interest, which is great. But obviously, as we talked about, we got a lot of guys that are going to be coming off the books very shortly that are pretty popular with Guerrero, Lopez, Brennan Davis, Anderson, Sean Murphy. So we're going to take some hits there. Clearly, we'll have a lower number after we lose those guys, but hopefully the closer and outfielder that we do end up adding in free agency will give us a little bit of a bump in terms of selling some seats. And looking at the National League MVP, Alex Palacio of the Giants, monster year, 322 batting average, 45 homers, 127 runs driven in. The third baseman who just has an incredible batting profile and has obviously been a pretty incredible offensive player over the course of his career, wins an MVP award. Second MVP award. He also won back in 2028, beat Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Fernando Tatis Jr., who finished second and third in the voting, and were the only other players who got first place votes. And in the American League, Raul Carminati, unanimous winner for the Angels. And you look at the numbers and you can see why. 313 batting average, 36 homers, 109 ribbies. Led the league in runs, led the league in hits. He's a center fielder, not great defensively, but certainly has plus range and plus arm. So very valuable. Put up a 7.7 WAR. As expected, our buddy Bobby Witt Jr. got some MVP votes. And Jacob Guerrero, we hadn't really talked about it, but offensively his season was not all that different than Carminati. He's a corner outfielder rather than a center fielder, and was not quite as good offensively, but had a nice year. So we had the second and third guys in the American League in terms of MVP voting this year, but obviously Carminati ran away with the award. And Alex Vasquez, even in a down year, did get a few votes for MVP. And former Royals Julio Rodriguez and Jasmine Diaz also received MVP votes. So a lot of current and former Royals getting some votes in the AL MVP award voting this year, but although Guerrero and Witt Jr. finished second and third, no MVP for the Royals, not that we were expecting it. And with Tumis and Bosma now locked up and with award season over, we are going to call it an episode. This point, we don't have anyone left for arbitration. Guerrero is the only player we're going to submit a QO to. I think it's possible that Brennan Davis or Will Goebel come back with the team. As I mentioned, we're looking for a corner outfielder and we're looking for a reliever, but willing to let both of them hit the open market and hopefully have more options on our side as we think about them. Similar with Yohan Adon, he could end up back with us if we can't find a real top line arm for the bullpen. Tim Anderson and Sean Murphy, don't necessarily want to be bringing back those guys in their late 30s, similar to Nikki Lopez. They've all been contributors to our team. Lopez and Anderson on multiple occasions, and then Murphy just for the past couple months of this season. But not willing to offer them money and think it's unlikely that any of them will be back with us next year. But we'll see what happens in free agency. You never know. So we will tackle free agency in full force in our next episode. As I mentioned, a top-end arm for the bullpen and a corner outfielder are the really only needs we have, because I think we're going to fill a lot of those infield gaps with the youngsters we have in AAA this year. So it will be, I think, a bit more quiet free agency period, if I can speak, coming up this offseason than we've had in some others, but still going to be real important to add a big arm for the bullpen and hopefully add an outfielder who can be playing almost every day for us and giving us a big bat. So a lot to do in the next episode, and we will focus on it then. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.